Now it's time for nobody's favorite part of the show. This is the worst of the week. This week's worst of the week is 1959's The Mummy. This is the Hammer Studios remake of the Universal Studios The Mummy. Now, we have talked many times on this show about how my favorite kind of a movie monster is a mummy. I love a mummy. And the problem is there are not very many good mummy movies. Well, the Hammer Studio, which dominated horror in the early 60s, their stuff, I always want to like a Hammer movie more than I actually do. Partially because they look great. The way they approach, Gothic horror with Technicolor really creates some lurid looking stuff. And these movies have just the right amount, just a little dab, a teaspoon, a half a teaspoon of exploitation in them to make them, to make you, if you're flipping channels, to make it look like this is a movie that I bet is a lot of fun. The problem is that they often get really stodgy and boring, that they tend to emphasize the wrong parts of the plot so that they're not terribly thrilling and action-oriented, but get a little navel-gazy about sitting around a table and talking about, I don't know, books and, I don't know, whatever, being real heady about the horror, as opposed to the visceralness that you want out of a movie that looks the way that it does with that bright red blood. You just want more blood, and what you end up getting is a bunch of British guys sitting around a table talking about what they ought to do as opposed to watching them do it. So, The Mummy is a real victim of, just as Christmas Joy is a victim of Hallmark Christmas formula, The Mummy, which is only like the third or fourth real Hammer horror movie, is in and of itself already a victim of the Hammer formula. That said, there are good things about this. Christopher Lee makes a fine mummy, and there is a lot of mummy action in this movie. While I love the original Universal Mummy, my problem with it is that outside of the opening scene, there's not a lot of an actual mummy shambling around in this movie. In 1959's Hammer's The Mummy, we get a lot of that guy being a mummy. And there's a pretty good part where the mummy gets a big hole blasted out of the middle of him and is still going. That is pretty good. But it's all so samey. It all just feels so retread. The other thing this one gets right is an extended Egyptian flashback. In Universal's The Mummy, we get a little bit of a flashback and some allusion to Kerim Bey's life in ancient Egypt. Here, we spend a lot of time in ancient Egypt. Maybe even too much time, but at least that's different and a little bit interesting. That said, though, even those, the Christopher Lee-ness, the mumminess of it cannot overcome the doldrums of it, which is why I'm giving The Mummy 2 stars. And don't forget to visit our website, northmetrotv.com/everymovieever. There, you can watch reviews of every movie we've ever covered here on the show, as well as complete episodes. That's northmetrotv.com/everymovieever.